Chapter 9, Becoming an Emotion Chef. As my two friends and I arrived at Coltibuono, we were struck by the beauty of this former monastery in the Chianti region of Italy, founded in 1051. It was September 12th, 2003. At the time, not only was it a producer of fine wines and olive oil, but it also hosted cooking courses. I had met a food and beverage executive for a high-end hotel chain that recommended it. He sent all his chefs there, so what an exciting prospect for us to receive that kind of experience. As of that day, my friend Jennifer had never cooked a day in her life. I was known for my potato salad and one-pot wonders. While very tasty, you would never accuse my dishes of being fancy. Maggie was the most proficient in the kitchen, but certainly not at a chef's level. We eagerly anticipated our day of learning from a professional chef, along with 7 other attendees. We started the day by going to their impressive garden to choose what vegetables and spices we would use. This was my introduction to farm-to-table dining. As the chef perused the garden with a basket on his arm to carry his harvest, he leaned over and gathered squash blossoms. I had never eaten a squash blossom, but was soon to enjoy it atop the schiacciata al rosmarino, or flatbread with rosemary, which we had also just picked. There were 5 courses, each prepared by 2 of the students. We laughed with Jen as she put on an apron and hat, taking photos as proof to her husband, coworkers, and friends that she was in the kitchen doing more than eating. After all the students prepared their menu items, additional chefs from the kitchen finished the job by putting them in the oven. While waiting for the finished product, we took a property tour and completed the day-long course by consuming the meal we had just prepared and paired it with their delicious wine. What a fabulous day! I know the date we attended this course because I still have the menu with recipes in my important documents file. Today, if I were to prepare the flatbread recipe, it would not include the squash blossom. It isn't in the recipe they handed out. The garden tour inspired the chef to add it. This highlights the difference between a cook following a recipe and a chef who engages curiosity and creativity. I found the following quote from an anonymous chef that states the differences nicely. A cook is someone who has a good mastery of basic cooking kitchen techniques and can follow a recipe and turn out really good food. A chef takes cooking to the next level by creating new dishes, new combinations of flavors, etc. Kind of like the difference between someone who can read music and play an instrument versus a composer. I see a chef, at home or professional, as one with a skilled palate that can identify the ingredients in a dish and distinguish the various flavors knocking about in their sensory systems. Skilled chefs don't just cook the traditional dishes, what was given to them in the way of recipes. They ignite their curiosity and reimagine food combinations. This path of curiosity can result in culinary failures as well as spectacular dishes. Isn't that how life is? A pageant containing the gamut from the worst of times to the best? Identifying the spectrum of feelings from life events would be like the chef, after observing it, taking a bite of food from the utensil to their lips, inhaling it as it draws near, and then placing the food in their mouth to let the flavors loose. There's a pause to allow those flavors to settle, discovering the subtle and not so subtle ingredients. What if we approached our emotions and feelings in the same manner? Emotion cook versus emotion chef. We are cooking up our emotions every day. The molecules of emotions deliver our emotion recipes from the brain to the cells of our bodies. Once that dish is received, this is communicated via feelings. It's up to us to taste the flavors of our emotions. This is where our level of interoceptive awareness comes into play. Developing it can help us go from being an emotion cook to an emotion chef. An emotion chef actively creates new recipes. It's a skill to develop unique flavor sensations. It takes a trained emotional palate to distinguish between affective emotions, such as love, anger, joy, and blue, and homeostatic emotions like tiredness, hunger, or discomfort. Have you ever been mad and afterward thought, I don't know why I got so angry. This normally doesn't bother me. The reason for this anger can be applied to both affective and homeostatic emotions. Your blood sugar is low from not eating, so the feelings coming up from your body because you need to eat, homeostatic, or your anger is coming from an emotion recipe, affective. Those might be glaringly apparent differences, but they could get mixed up depending on available energy and mood. It happens to me and can happen to all of us. Recently, I was exhausted, and the past few months were overwhelming. My 90-year-old father's wife died suddenly after almost 30 years of marriage. Since that day, with assistance from my sister, who works 6 days a week, we have moved him 3 times. Once to my house so we could look locally for an apartment in a retirement community, while at the same time coordinating an estate sale, packing, and transporting his stuff to his new apartment. Amidst all this, we found a leak in the ceiling of his house that we needed to put on the market to pay for his new expensive apartment. I found someone to repair it, but the wrong glue was used, leading to more extensive damage and an insurance and restoration nightmare. Then, after a little over 2 months in his lovely apartment, my dad got the lousy noro-stomach virus. While he seemed better, he was severely dehydrated and fell in the bathroom. It was not good. After a couple days in the hospital, he spent a few weeks in a skilled nursing facility. We had to move the poor man from his apartment to assisted living with just 4 days to make this happen. That meant finding a place he could afford, packing up again, and moving the minimal amount of furniture and stuff he needed from the old place to his new apartment in 3 days. Later, we moved what was left to my sister's garage for storage. This whole time, I managed the repairs still in progress at his house, 100 miles away. When I say I was exhausted, that seems like an understatement. It was like I felt frazzled in every molecule of my body. I told people that my atoms were tired. For the record, I don't think atoms get tired, but it was said for effect. Not long after we completed my father's move to skilled nursing, my husband, who has been a trooper, wanted to go to dinner and a movie. The next day, we had a wedding in San Francisco with plans to stay overnight. I wanted none of it. All I wanted was to sleep for days in bed with my dog snuggling me. I barely made it through the movie. I may have snored in my seat. The following morning, I was angry at everything Andrew did, blaming him for making me more tired by taking me out for a lovely date night. Everything seemed to upset me. "You are breathing wrong," raced through my head as I hurried to get packed for San Francisco. It was a considerable effort to capture and challenge those thoughts and feelings so that those silly words didn't pass my lips. But still, too many made it out. That is until I got my needed rest, which took several days. The interweaving of the two types of emotions makes for a strong cord. When either cord is frayed, it impacts the other and impedes our well-being. This codependency between them is why managing our physical health is essential to our mental health. Perhaps to you and my wonderful husband, my homeo out of stasis condition was blatantly evident in this extreme example. But in the not so extreme circumstances, it isn't always easy to identify. And that is why I encourage everyone, when possible, to be proactive in managing their energy. For this reason, An emotion chef knows the following tools are necessary for a well-maintained kitchen. Get enough good sleep. Eat a balanced diet, eliminating food additives such as flavor enhancers, preservatives, excess sugars, and fats. Exercise. Be social in person with friends, family, or volunteer, with social media as a supplement, not a primary social activity. If circumstances permit, adopt a pet as a source of uplifting energy. Meditate or do breath work, or both. Drink lots of water. Spend time out in nature, good to combine with exercise. Practice setting boundaries. Have your doctor check your blood, including hormone levels, which significantly impact the emotions of both men and women. Listen to people who encourage you to rest, stop living on sugar, get out with friends or family, take a scenic vacation, or any from the above list, as they may see something you can't see in yourself. Listening to people is truly important. I remember leaving the restroom at the airport, and the woman ahead of me had made it all the way out in public with her skirt tucked in. I quickly ran over and told her. I was surprised she didn't feel a breeze. The problem was she couldn't see or feel what was behind her, and that was apparent to others. People who love us, bosses, coaches, and therapists, can tell us what we can't see or don't want to identify, and the obvious we think others can't observe, just like that tucked-in skirt. We have the tools for managing our energy, as provided in Chapter 7, to help with homeostatic emotions. What about affective emotions? The emotion recipes constructed using past experiences. This is where developing the skills of interoceptive awareness is important. Increased interoceptive awareness helps you identify, name, and describe your feelings. This comes as you build your emotion chef skills. I want to make it abundantly clear that nobody is perfect, and while I don't know for sure, I bet some or all of the wellness gurus fall short and have emotional outbursts. Not because they don't believe in what they are preaching. Imperfection is part of being human, and we need to embrace this fact. I have moments when I don't know how I feel or where the feeling's coming from, even though I think I'm pretty self-aware. That is okay. However, that doesn't mean I don't try to figure it out, especially if the feeling lingers. My body is trying to tell me something. I could be sick or upset about something I haven't made the connection to yet. In the meantime, while I try to figure it out, I show myself compassion and love, and you should too. Developing your emotional palate. The definition of the word palate, according to dictionary.com, is a person's appreciation of taste and flavor, especially when sophisticated and discriminating. A limited series called Drops of God is based on a Japanese manga series about wine. My self-proclaimed wine enthusiast husband asked if I would watch it with him. I usually pass because I can get bored listening to people talk endlessly about wine, but this series was great. It's a story of the estranged daughter of a man with the world's most extensive and expensive wine collection, who competes with her father's protege, her nemesis, for her inheritance after the father dies. A series of 3 tests determine who will inherit it all. The first involved correctly identifying the bottle, including the year, type of grape, and producer. The daughter, Camille, became ill if she drank alcohol. It is tough to identify a wine without tasting it. How could she win her rightful inheritance? Could she do it by smell alone? Luckily, she inherited her father's fantastic nose, which helped her identify some of the characteristics of the wine. But she knew it wasn't enough. She correctly identified the wine but got the wrong vintage. Quite a feat, given that she could only sniff it. Eventually, she gets over her aversion and can taste it without fainting or getting violently sick. I won't tell you if she won, in case you watch it. Camille was born with an exceptional nose and palate. Yes, the DNA factor gave her the gift, but he also trained her sensory skills by exposing her to various scents. As a young girl, the father would blindfold her, placing bowls of fruits, nuts, spices, and I believe she even smelled dirt, quizzing her as to their identity. Then he gave her a glass of wine to inhale and ask her to detect the flavors. She got very good at it. As an adult, after she started drinking the wine, she could detect even more flavors than she did with her nose alone. 2 lessons from this story. First, she still needed to develop her skills, even with an inherited, intense sense of smell. The natural talent was enhanced because of her father's training. We may have been born connected to our feelings, but there might be room for improvement. Second, all those containers of ingredients were specific fruits, nuts, and so forth. Camille didn't respond with fruit. She was specific with the name of the fruit. Some people who drink wine get even more specific about whether it's underripe or overripe. This provides a more granular description. When it comes to emotions, we have hundreds of words to identify and describe them, each with a slight variation that allows you to differentiate your feelings or emotional granularity, which I introduced in Chapter 3. You may remember the illustration I used of a bagel to explain it. Here it is again in summary, in case you forgot. Let's say a bagel equates to the emotion of anger. A plain bagel with cream cheese and a fried egg is the emotion offended. An everything bagel with cream cheese and jam is irate. An onion bagel with cream cheese and potato chips is annoyed. I had a friend who introduced me to this, and it is good. Each recipe is slightly different, creating a unique experience. This is emotional granularity. This isn't just for negative emotions. While not researched, there are benefits to having granularity for positive emotions. I used the example earlier of having more flavors of love. This would be the ability to distinguish all the variations, including a crush, passionate, platonic, familial, and mature love. There are so many feeling words to choose from, as this word cloud exemplifies. My source for developing emotional granularity is the dictionary for a base understanding or meaning of the word. There are several online dictionaries and apps. Today, my go-to is an app called Word Hippo. You can't miss the cute pink hippo if you search for it on the App Store. It is gold if you're doing crossword puzzles, playing words with friends, or Scrabble. I use it for both writing and my personal emotion chef work. With it, when I search for a word, the various definitions for that word are displayed and alternative word choices for each one. I guess you could also explain it this way. The app provides the context, or how the word can be used, and the words that fit that context fall beneath it. It helps me to find alternative words to describe my feelings. I also use dictionary.com and Edym Online to understand the word's etymology or origin. I enjoy understanding how a word was created and transformed over time. The background connects me to it and helps me design my recipes. This is because of my curious nature and my fondness for history. But you don't always need a dictionary. You can make up your own words when you can't find the right one. Twitterpated didn't exist until Disney created it for the movie Bambi. A close one to it is flutterpated. Both relate to that titillating emotion you feel when you first meet someone with whom you have an enormous attraction, that rush of being overcome by romantic sensations. Feeling like you're somewhere between 2 emotions and can't find the right word? Combine words to make a new one. Eden Scher has a cute book called The Emotionary, a dictionary of words that don't exist for feelings that do. She struggled to articulate her feelings through words, so she started making up her own. It is done with humor and isn't always an emotion, but it is fun and gives examples of mixing words to form new ones. For instance, she made up the word therapize, which means to give advice to others based on things once learned in therapy but never followed the same guidance oneself. Too funny and a bit true. I was a little stingy with the word love for a long time and doled it out sparingly. Many people who know me will find that surprising, but it's true. It was hard for me to use it with people I didn't know, even with ones I did. By the age of 49, when I married my second husband, I had only told 4 men I loved them romantically, including my husband. So why was I so limited with the word? For one, as a child, when you are confused by caring for someone who does inappropriate things, that can, without a doubt, mess up your feelings of love. But it goes beyond that. I was raised in a religion where the world as we know it was going to end, and only a few would live through Armageddon. I remember playing in grade school with a girl named Parvin, who I really liked. The night before, I had heard a congregation talk about the end of the system of things. I looked at Parvin, thinking she would die because she was not a part of God's flock. Pretty much everyone at my school, including my favorite teachers like Miss Baird, would likely die because they didn't share the same faith. It was an act of love that we tried to convert them so that they would live, but a loving act didn't equate to loving for me. Growing up, your skin color or socioeconomic status didn't matter. It was how you believed. Hate was never taught outright, but I realized that these teachings made it hard for me to love people, strangers in particular, if they would die when the time came for God to rid the earth of unbelievers. As a kid, I remember watching people on TV from impoverished countries crying over losing a loved one. I wondered if they felt how people in my world felt about loss. I didn't realize that we share the same emotions. I don't know if the religious differences brought out this disconnect, but it is an example of how emotions, like love, can be formed in the young. It is also an example of how discrimination isn't so obvious to a child. I believe this demonstrates what we learn can be as important as what we don't. I cannot say why, as a kid, I didn't know all humans share the same emotions, because we do. It isn't limited to humans. We can see the emotions of love, kindness, caring, joy, happiness, sadness, and grief displayed in the animal world. My Instagram feed is filled with images and videos demonstrating this. Walking through the front door to my happy dogs, Finnegan and Fiona, proves this. In my quest to expand my emotional palette, I needed a word representing how I felt about people with whom I felt no connection. They were strangers or tourists in my life, so how could I love them? But didn't the Beatles say, all you need is love? So I combined respect and compassion into res passion, which I defined as concern and sympathetic awareness or tolerance for others, even when you do not agree with how they feel, think, believe, or look. It encapsulates, at least for me, the kind of feeling that shows I care deeply, but not as deeply as love. It isn't like I say out loud, I res passion you. This is my internal recipe that nobody knew I was cooking. Over time, my recipe for love has expanded and changed, as hopefully do most of our recipes. I can now say that I love strangers in a res passionate way and also in the more traditional definition of deep affection. I believe love is simple and complex, making it quite interesting, but also the most important of emotions. When it comes to conflict, a solution born of love can help make it stick. Not the Hallmark movie kind of love, the res passionate type of love that says, I want things better for you and for me, and for all who are affected by our hate or conflict. The problem is that due to a steady diet of hate, some people have never learned what love feels like. Perhaps They don't love themselves. As emotion chefs, we can be the ones who demonstrate what love looks like and talk about what it means to us, our recipes, which most importantly includes loving ourselves. Developing emotional granularity with a proactive approach to expanding our emotion recipes is what being an emotion chef is all about. We are giving the brain more to choose from to reduce the opportunity for prediction error. Emotion chef progression. If your head is exploding and you're thinking, this is too much, I can't do it, don't worry. Someone fresh out of cooking school can't work as an executive chef. They have to work up to it, gaining skills along the way. The same is true for emotion chefs. Using the similar titles you would find in a restaurant kitchen, I will take you through the progression of emotion chef development designed to increase your interoceptive awareness, emotional granularity, and self-awareness. These three skills, along with proper kitchen care, are what I believe are foundational for well-being. Emotion station chef. In a kitchen, a station chef is in charge of one area of production, salads, sides, etc. An emotion station chef similarly focuses on one aspect of emotion management, interoceptive awareness. Chapter 3 and my website contain exercises to help you develop a connection to the feelings in your body. If those exercises made you uncomfortable, this is the right starting place. Interoception is how you feel inside and how your body communicates with you. Shutting down what your body has to say doesn't mean it will stop talking. It will just get louder. Fear of what is being communicated could often be why we don't want to listen. Suppose you remember that your fears and anxieties and the thoughts around them are the prediction of the brain and aren't necessarily true. Could feeling and moving past your emotions feel less scary? Exposing Worry's Deceit, Percentage of Untrue Worries in Generalized Anxiety Disorder Treatment by Lucas Lafreniere and Michelle Newman, records the results of 29 participants with generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, who recorded their worries for 10 days and then tracked their worry outcomes for 30 days. Primary results revealed that 91.4% of worry predictions did not come true. Higher percentages of untrue worries significantly predicted lower GAD symptoms after treatment, as well as a greater slope of symptom reduction from pre to post-trial. This is not the only study that found this to be true. It's called effective forecasting, or the prediction of how we will feel about an event in the future. According to psychologists Daniel Gilbert and Timothy Wilson, who coined the term, whether people overestimate how good or bad they will feel, overestimate how quickly those feelings will arise, or underestimate how quickly they will dissipate, the important point is that they overestimate how powerfully the event will impact their emotional lives. We can inflate how much an event, like winning the lottery or getting married, will add to our happiness, or how much a dreaded event, like feeling our emotions, will be. As much as we like to play it out in our heads, our perceptions of future events are not always accurate. Think about the energetic toll unnecessary worrying can take on the body for nothing. This is why I encourage you to use the Carry Bear and ask yourself, is there a bear in the campground? Just like the participants in the study, you can record your worries to see if they come true. If the studies are correct, only 8.6% of the time, the bear is there. There is also the consideration of what we may lose and what could happen if we don't face our emotions. How often have you heard the story of a person in pain who didn't want to see a care provider out of fear of cancer, only to find out it was benign? The needless anxiety it created and the extended period of pain endured. Sadly, there are cases where it is cancer, but because they waited too long, it is now a terminal situation. All because of fear. Developing interoceptive awareness is an emotion station chef's sole task. It can mean conquering any potential anxieties about what your body is telling you. That might not seem like much, but it is crucial. This is the foundational skill to help you develop your internal chat with the body. As a reminder, the interoceptive communication between your mind and body works for both affective and homeostatic emotions. Increasing this helps you to take better care of your physical health. My chiropractor always comments on how well I know my body when he is performing adjustments. I can tell when he didn't quite get all of it, and I'm usually right. This is because I am more connected to my body and thus my intuition. Take as much time as you need, but don't let your concerns stop you. Remember, 91.4% of them are likely not to come true. When this becomes easier and you're comfortable with the process, it's time to move on to becoming an emotion sous chef. Emotion sous chef. Sous chefs in a restaurant, in addition to cooking, make sure all kitchen equipment is in working order. They must thoroughly understand how to use and troubleshoot all appliances and cooking instruments in case of a malfunctioning cooking device. In Chapter 3 and on my website, in the section Discovering Recipes in the Moment, is what you are tasked with. This is the art of understanding some of your current recipes and allows you to challenge them. The aim is to develop emotional granularity, which is the ability to experience emotions specific to the context of a situation or encounter. Otherwise, emotions can become entangled with similar yet different events. This allows you to distinguish feeling states, making your responses more precise. This skill is tied to better coping skills and emotion regulation, effectively managing and responding to various situations. Emotions vary in intensity and depth. Emotional granularity skills provide the distinction in our emotional palette. Let's say you were angry at someone, and after completing the exercise, you realize you were more hurt than angry. Pull out the Word Hippo app or an online dictionary to see if another word fits better to the situation, adding to your emotional granularity. At first, this may take several minutes, but as you practice, it becomes easier and faster. You can take it a step further. If someone was present during the emotion-stirring moment, ask them what they experienced to see if you perceived the situation as they did. They may have captured something you didn't. Just like the investigators of a crime scene get different accounts from witnesses, taken together, it tells a broader story of what happened. I always encourage asking the quote-unquote offender directly to ensure if you understood them. Offense can be taken so quickly without the opportunity for clarification. We tend to think of being right or wrong in sensitive situations, but that is not what I suggest. Rather than trying to be right or wrong, perhaps think in terms of what potentially did I miss? Maybe you just captured the parts your brain focused on. The fact that our brain can add things that aren't there because it expects them provides an allowance for our inherent inability to seize everything in a moment, which can lead to better conversations and emotional outcomes. The emotion sous chef eventually doesn't have to prompt themselves to complete this exercise. It becomes a natural occurrence. Taking time for self-reflection becomes routine. Increased personal awareness of internal feelings results in better interactions with others. The emotion sous chef's ability to communicate their personal experiences with others and relabel those experiences, aka recipes, increases their awareness and readies them to become an emotion executive chef. Emotion executive chef. In a restaurant, The executive chef is the leader in charge of everything that goes on in the kitchen and often manages multiple kitchens. Part of their responsibility is developing innovative recipes, which requires a developed palate, imagination, and accepting failures when those recipes don't work. Often, failures are when we learn the most and lead to better outcomes. Also important is engaging in clear and direct communication with all who work for them and ensure a smooth running restaurant. At this point, your interoceptive awareness and ability to taste the flavors of your emotions have increased, allowing you to relabel your emotion recipes when needed. Now you are ready for a deeper dive. In Chapter 3 and on my website, you will find the exercise Uncover Your Hidden Recipes, which I highly recommend. This exercise helps expose the recipes for the emotions you want to feel more of because they feel delicious, and those you want to avoid because they taste so badly. This exercise is like wandering in a kitchen library of emotion recipes to see if it's a classic that must stay, unhealthy and ought to go, or maybe just needs some tweaks. At the same time, it can spark ideas for new recipes. What does a new recipe look like? The list of ingredients can include actions from the outside world that make up our experiences and the labels we assign. I created a list of ingredients for what I wanted in a life partner, which I found with my husband. I guess you could say it was a shopping list for love. I recognized him very quickly because my brain contained the details of what I wanted and what was important to me. Yes, there were some physical characteristics on that list, but it had actions that I needed from him as a partner. When thinking about the recipes you create, try not to let specific people influence the ingredients. It might not have the appropriate emotional nutrition for you if you design it around someone else. This is especially true if they don't have the ability to give you what you need. If you ask someone who is colorblind what shade of blue a shirt is, they will likely have a hard time because they have a color vision deficiency. Some people have low interoceptive awareness that makes it hard to supply emotional necessities for others, but it doesn't mean that they can't be in your life. Let's say you want to feel more closeness. If you pick from a list of what your current partner provides, you might miss out on ingredients for that feeling. Get specific with the emotion. Is the closeness you want romantic or from friends and family? If it is limited to romantic, then the source of ingredients is restrictive. Can a friend or family member provide it? Maybe have a recipe for each, one for friends, one for family, and one for romantic. Trying to meet all our ingredient needs from one person might leave you emotionally malnourished and harm the relationship. In your personal development, for which I believe there is no limit, these recipes can become more refined as your emotional appetite and palate evolve. An executive emotion chef is a leader and a trainer. This means that they use granularity in labeling their recipes and communicating with others, asking questions to help understand, not assuming their feelings. Of course, discretion must take place, given the relationship, but it can be done without prying. If someone shares how they are feeling, ask for specificity, the details of their emotions. You might be surprised at how many times you get the response, "I don't know." This allows them the opportunity to reflect as they are likely running on emotional autopilot. The best teacher is our actions. Modeling emotion chef skills demonstrates them for others. The role of an executive emotion chef can include using other tools to learn more about themselves and others. This can be accomplished by ingesting an array of viewpoints, not leaning just towards those with whom we agree. Curiosity is an excellent tool in this arena. I use it to find something I accept in a dissenting opinion, or a positive attribute in someone with whom I have an issue or don't like. A curious mind can help minimize or dissolve heightened emotions. While I am not always successful, it creates great opportunities for new experiences. It's about directing focus and widening our view. Ultimately, it is learning. I participated in a Toastmasters speech contest. I opened my talk by describing a man as handsome, charming, and brilliant. While in law school, in preparation for his career, he joined the state's crime prevention task force. As a volunteer at a suicide hotline, he was credited with saving many lives. After I finished the description, I asked the audience to raise their hand if they would have coffee with him. Most hands were raised. Then I revealed his name, Ted Bundy, the notorious confessed mass murderer of 30 women, although the number is thought to be over 100. While I initially focused them on this horrible person's positive attributes, it doesn't make them less accurate. Of course, I did this to be dramatic and to demonstrate a point. Even a vile human like Ted Bundy has positive attributes. So too with events and people we deem negative. Also, the opposite is true. Concentrating on a person's positive traits might mean we miss the ones that we should be wary of, as was the case with Ted Bundy. Seeking a fuller picture provides a more accurate depiction, allowing you to fine-tune your recipes intentionally. If you feel confident as an emotion executive chef, I applaud you. I think what you have accomplished is pretty awesome. It isn't easy to have self-reflection and admit one's faults. Decision-making is balanced by thought, feeling, and intuition. But it allows you to grow in love, compassion, curiosity, empathy, and all those other yummy emotions that give us confidence in who we are and provide a strong love of self. Emotion Master Chef. While I don't believe we can fully master our emotions, we can master the process of amplifying our awareness. By becoming more skilled at identifying our feelings, we deepen our self-understanding and grow more capable in navigating our emotional experiences and taking an interest in the emotions of others, providing an example of how to manage emotions more effectively and communicate them clearly. Our mind, brain, and bodily functions contain mysteries. So how could we master them? We are too complex, and so many factors play into how we feel that rare is the person who can truly master them. I leave room for such an enlightened person to exist, but they would not be the norm. All we can do is continually increase our awareness. This comes with connection, the interoceptive connection that syncs our body to our mind. From there, I think the potential connections available to us are enormous. It builds our link to various aspects of life and trust in our intuitions and decisions. Self-awareness, focused on both the strengths and weaknesses of who we are, help build confidence and humility, reducing insecurities and biases. It can diminish or eliminate reliance on others' opinions and ideas because we know what we want and don't want, improving our communication with ourselves and others. And with that knowledge, we fall in love with ourselves, flaws and all. Think about a world with fewer insecure people. Biases would melt and kindness would dominate. We would see fewer people put down others, emotionally or physically, to make themselves feel better. We would see fewer people put down others, emotionally or physically, to make themselves feel better. This includes animals, birds, and other forms of life. We know who we are, and we have the skills to keep evolving. Why? Because we are not ruled by fear and are more capable of feeling and showing love. The fear of being less than or not enough by the societal standards someone else created to make themselves feel better. That is very unpleasant on the emotional palate. On the other hand, adding love to every emotion recipe will always make it more flavorful. I'm not talking about creating a utopia where everybody gets along. Likely, we will always have differences of opinion, inherent selfishness, ego, and all the other things that make us human. We are so far from any utopia right now that any movement towards increased awareness could only make a dent. But why not strive for a big dent? That said, if you see me on social or other forms of media not following this book perfectly, this will confirm that I am as human as the next person and have plenty of opportunity for growth.